Success! Oh, hi. Part 2. There was a part 1. This is part 2. So I ended up going to Rampart after Aspen Valley was like, we're done with you. And I was like, okay. And again, much didn't really continue. I believe I did a year and a half at Aspen Valley and then a year and a half at Rampart. So I have like 3 years of high school under my belt. Never graduated, spoiler alert. But again, like my middle school counselor said, school's not for everybody. Excuse me. I never did homework. Eventually, I skipped most of my classes, and all I cared about was the socializing and the ladies. Speaking of ladies, that's really where it all fell apart. My first love, Chelsea. Ooh, her father once said this great thing. Because, you know, when you're young, you're a teenager, hormones, puberty, you think you know everything. And I just thought for sure that Chelsea and I, like I was saying before, at that point in my life, I thought that all that mattered was finding your soulmate and living happily ever after. Boy, was I wrong. But at that point in my, that being my first love, we were, you know, head over heels convinced that we would be together forever. And her father said this amazing thing that always stuck with me. And you know, we were like, we're in love. And he was like, yeah, but will your love survive the test of time? And at the time, what I thought that meant was, will you love each other forever? But that's not what he meant. And I now know that it was much more profound than that. Because what it really meant was, nothing lasts forever. Nothing survives the test of time. Even if you do love each other forever, that doesn't mean you're going to be together forever, because you grow, you change, you develop. I mean, that's why I'm divorced, is because we got married too young, not to Chelsea, and then within a few years, we were totally different people that wanted different things, yada, yada, yada. Anywho, so I did end up eventually going to Rampart, but I took the breakup pretty difficult with Chelsea. I was obsessed with the Scream movies. I had troubles with... I had a good childhood. I had a good family. I had great parents. 2 older brothers that I saw at a very young age, before my very own eyes, get handcuffed and arrested, do despicable things, be despicable towards my parents, have physical fights with my father, yada, yada, yada. Nothing too extreme. I just knew that I witnessed firsthand how horrible being a teenager could be. My poor parents had 3 sons in the 90s. But I didn't learn from that. As the youngest, I should have learned, and I didn't. Luckily, I learned from my own mistakes. They didn't. They kept making the same mistakes. I learned from mine, at least. But I was very obsessed with the Scream franchise at the time. I had so many fun times hanging with my best friend Matt and Chad in Matt's basement. Both of them I met at Aspen Valley High School before I went to Rampart. Chad introduced himself to me, and then introduced me to his other friend, Matt. We were all very introvert. But Chad was more of an extrovert than Matt and I. Matt, who, full disclosure, I hope he doesn't be upset that I'm telling tales out of school. He's the creator of Madness, the video game and popular franchise now. That was a huge YouTube hit. Madness. Little head, cross-face guy, clown dude, kicking butt, action. I literally got to witness my best friend Matt create a YouTube sensation before the days of YouTube, in the early days of the internet, in his basement before my very eyes. I will never take that for granted. I believe he's since sold it. Again, I don't want to tell tales out of school. This is all speculation for me. But I was best friends with the creator of Madness when he created Madness. And he would be like, hey, let me show you what I have so far. And I'd be like, that's amazing. You made that? Next thing you know, it's a huge hit. If you look up Madness, I believe it's a video game now. There's merchandise. Maybe there'll be a movie someday. I think they've made like live-action short films. I'm just blown away that I got to experience that from the ground level. Literally. His basement. We had so much fun partying back in the day as teenagers in high school. We did a lot of drinking in that basement. There was some jacuzzi strip dares. Not with them, but with, you know, there were girls there. Not that that matters, but plenty of times where I vomited profusely or was hungover, and I can't tell you how many times I looked in the mirror in the basement at my friend Matt's house at myself saying I'm never going to drink again. It was many times. Let's just say it never really came to fruition. Anywho, I don't drink liquor anymore, at least. But, anyway, lots of great times in that basement. But Matt also, and in that basement, was where I first saw Scream. And I became obsessed with the Scream franchise. And when Chelsea broke up with me, when at the time, I also became a Korn fan. And I think she took it a little too hard that I was obsessed with a band with such hardcore lyrics. And one day it seemed like she was concerned with me. My teenage years, I was obsessed with, if you don't have a girlfriend and someone who loves you. Like I said, I had a great childhood. My parents loved me. They weren't abusive or anything like that. My dad would get angry and physical somewhat. We were spanked with a crib leg. It was very thick. But it was just a spanking. Back then, it's okay. Say what you will now, but it's fine. I don't spank my son, but back then, things were different. But aside from that, my parents were never abusive, whether it be emotionally, verbally, or physically. So I had a great childhood. I had no reason to become depressed, or suicidal, or psychotic. But somewhere along the line, they diagnosed me with depression psychosis. They put me on Risperdal and Celexa, 2 drugs that they do not prescribe to people anymore, especially kids. Don't prescribe things to teenagers or kids, because it's called puberty, it's called your brain's developing, it's called you growing up in the world. These are temporary problems that need one-on-one communication and attention, not pills. But they didn't know any better back then. I can't believe that people still do that now. Nobody should be doing anything before the age of 25, especially medication. You're growing up. Teenagers are going to be crazy and weird and Look at shootings and mass murders and whatnot. 9 times out of 10, they're people under the age of 25. I digress. They're also relationship related or heartbreak. Which, again, okay, I would have been one of those. If somebody put a gun in my hand when Chelsea broke up with me, there would have been a Columbine before Columbine. Because I was unstable. Because I would have had access to something that would just would have let it out. But I grew up. I got over it. Eventually they put me on Paxil, which made me feel like a god and unstoppable, like most teenagers. I did a lot of shoplifting. A lot of shoplifting on Paxil. And off. I also had a lot of times with I'm jumping all over the place, and I do apologize, because I'm just going to, like I said, it's got to be Cliff Notes now. Otherwise, I would do hours and hours and hours. Yes, I should write books. I've got great stories. Anybody want to know more details about any of them? You got it. I'm an open book. But just friendly reminder, you shouldn't be watching this. This is not for you. I did a lot of speed back when I was young. I think that was more like 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah. Not the whole time, but those were the ages when I would go in and out of doing speed. Didn't before, haven't since. Maybe more like 17, 18, 19, 20. Maybe like 18, 19, 20. No, whatever it was. Doesn't matter. The point being, because my girlfriend broke up with me that I thought was the end-all be-all, and she did, by the way, because her high school counselor, I will never forget, she went to go see her counselor, came out, later that day broke up with me. It might have been immediately thereafter. So I knew that the counselor had something to do with it. And it turns out the counselor advised her because she was concerned about her prospects after high school and how she wanted to further her education and go to college. And I believe, thanks to Facebook, we all know what Facebook was made for, she's had a nice, happy, successful, great life. Great, good for her. But the effect it had on me as a troubled teenager was not very good. Her counselor said, you need to pick one, you need to focus on one thing, you should probably break up with him. So she was advised by her counselor to break up with me, and she did. I lost it. And because Scream was such a big influence on me, I plotted to murder her. Every last detail. I hid the change of clothes, I had the knife, I had the Scream outfit. I knew that her parents left her back door unlocked so that she could get in after school. And one day I told her I wanted to show her because we were still stayed friends after we broke up, and I was convinced in my head the world would be a better place without her. And it's funny, I used to tell this story. It was my go-to. Whenever I would meet someone, it was my go-to story. Oh, let me tell you the story about how I almost killed my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, whatever. I was so proud of it. And they'd be like, oh, I thought it was some kind of achievement or accomplishment. Obviously, I'm a grown adult now and I know better, but I was so proud of it back then. Anyway, I think I was proud of it because I knew that I was incapable. Spoiler alert, that's how the story ends. I met her at her house after school one day, knowing the time frame, knowing that it would be an hour or so before her younger brother came home from middle school, knowing that her parents would be at work, and it would just be her and I alone at the house. But I planned in my head, I never would have gone through with it, apparently, I learned, but I wore a Scream costume. I said I wanted to show her my Halloween costume. See, I felt like I had an alibi. The first mistake any criminal makes is assuming they'll get away with it. I never would have gotten away with it. I said, I met her at her house, and I said, let me show you my Halloween costume. I'm going to go change into it. So my alibi was that if anyone was watching, they would have seen me leave her house, and then they would have seen someone dressed in a Scream outfit. Ghostface, excuse me. Back then, it wasn't called Ghostface yet. Go into her house, and I had a knife, and I'll never forget the moment being in the basement, my heart's pounding, and I was planning on, I even knew how I was going to start. Forgive me for getting so detailed, but I told you, I'm laying it all out there. If anything happens to me, I want my story told. This is part of my story. We all have shameful things. Maybe they'll take me to the funny farm for this, but no, this is my past. Again, I was a teenager. I was heartbroken. I was on Lord knows what medication. This is no longer me. This is my teens. I'm almost 40. Thank goodness I've learned so much. But I was going to stab in the middle, stab to the right, stab to the left, twist, gut spew. Scream had a very negative influence on me. It's true what they say. Anyway, I'll just never forget standing there, my heart's pounding, and I was supposed to do it. Like, this was the moment. She was standing right in front of me, and I was supposed to do it, and I couldn't. There was no changed my mind. There was no got scared or cold feet or nervous or, oh, maybe I would get caught. I had, like, change of clothes down the way so that if anyone was watching, they would see a Ghostface leave. I was going to go hide somewhere and change clothes. No one would have been... Again, I thought I had it all planned out, but it doesn't matter. I couldn't do it. That was the moment of my life that I learned that I, personally, am incapable of committing murder. That's the good news. I am incapable of committing murder. Some people can do that. Some people can't. I can't. I learned that day, and I'm very thankful for that. Never crossed my mind again. I was a stupid teen. Somewhere down the line, her and I got back together, broke up again, something like that. We were still friends for quite some time, but I ended up, for some stupid reason, telling her this story. There was also another deal. We went to homecoming. At one point, undercover cops were after, because I told her the story of how That's right. Because then at one point I told her the story of how I was going to kill her that day. I told her that. I think it spooked her. And then when things hit the fan again, I had this other friend, and I sent him into the house. He was wearing Mickey Mouse gloves to avoid fingerprints. But I knew that I didn't... At that point, I was like at God complex level. I had disciples. I had a new girlfriend. I just wanted revenge for heartbreak. You see what relationships do? Relationships are very bad. They're the downfall of humanity, and they're a weakness that can be overcome. I do not believe in relationships anymore, but we'll get there in a later video. The point being, I sent this other dude in her house one time to spook her with a scream mask and had him lay it on her bed. That's pretty messed up. I heard later, years later, because her and I, for a while, until it all fell out, still stayed friendly. I don't know how. I'm very charming. But I heard from her one day what it was like to come home and find a scream mask on her pillow, having already known the story of where I was going to kill her once. Or planned to. I wasn't going to, obviously. Nothing stopped me. I stopped myself, because I'm incapable. And she said she was terrified and frozen and assumed that I was in the closet. I can't imagine that poor girl in that moment, thinking that I was about to jump out of a closet and kill her. I was just trying to scare her. That's when they put undercover cops on me. I'm pretty sure it wasn't paranoia. It's possible, but there was an unmarked van parked outside my house for a while. They arrested my best friend the night of homecoming, who, when he was released the next day, said they spent the entire night questioning him about me, and told him that the only reason they arrested him was so that in case anything happened that night, they could pin it on me. Which I was planning things. I sent people to go beat up Chelsea's date that night. They ended up beating up the wrong guy. I had a very troubled teenage years, which a lot of teens do. So give them attention, don't give them pills, and don't let young people get their hands on weapons, because they'll turn heartbreak into murder, thinking their world's over when it's not. You don't start to realize how life really is until you're about 25, 30, 35. Trust me. Anyone under the age of 25 knows nothing. 30. So yeah, there was that. Then I met my future wife. We were best friends for a while. I was in love with her for a long time. One day I told her. We stayed best friends. We hooked up one full moon. One thing led to another. We were dating. She said, let's get married one day. We got married. She cheated on me numerous times. We ended up getting divorced. Wasn't my idea. She left me. I'm the sucker who stuck around even after she cheated on me once when we were dating, and then again when we were married, and then a second time when we were married. So 3 times altogether. Then she wanted a divorce. Got pregnant from him. Ooh, when they kicked open my door that one time. But I think we're getting into my 20s. We gotta stick to the teenage years. High school was rough. I eventually dropped out. No, well, I was technically kicked out of Rampart when they said, we don't need you here anymore, you don't go to class. But the day Chelsea broke up with me, another girl said, she was really obsessed with me for a while, but she had a boyfriend of years. And when she found out that Chelsea broke up with me, she broke up with her boyfriend so that she could hook up with me. And I went to her house that day. Skipped school. No one was home. She said, I just broke up with my girlfriend, and I was so distraught about the Chelsea situation. This is before all the murder stuff. She said, how can I make you feel better? This is going to get vulgar. And, she said, is there anything I can do for you? What do you want? I said, honestly, all I want is for you to go down on me while I watch TV. It was an empowering thing. I wanted to feel like I had power and control over someone. She did. Didn't get me very far. She ended up being the one a while later who took my virginity. I lost my virginity the day before my 17th birthday. So technically I was 16, but technically I was 17. That's when I lost my virginity, the day before my 17th birthday. I did not complete. She did. I remember thinking, that's it. That's what sex is. But it was crazy because I was planning on this other girl I was dating, Mandy. We were going to lose our virginity together. We had a plan. But when we tried one time, I couldn't, first time jitters. And then I found out after the fact that she told this other girl long after this fact, to sleep with me, just to make me happy. Then I drove to Alamosa for Mandy once. I miss Mandy. I wish I could track her down. Mandy, if you're out there, say hello. You were kind of one of the ones that got away. She was really cool. She rode dirt bikes. But my first sexual relationship was a girl that I met after having a phone-only relationship with for months, and then we decided to... we were going to plan on losing our virginity together for the year 2000 at midnight. So we went to a party, 1999. I made the mistake of asking my dad for a ride to this party when it was within walking distance. A kid walked by with a beer. My dad saw that. Said, you can't go into this party. If you go into this party, I'm going to call the cops on this party. So I didn't go to the party, and instead I took all my anger out on my father, said horrible things to him, and threatened him with a knife. He was so scared that he called the police, and I was arrested for felony menacing with a deadly weapon. I was talked down. I got probation. Did about a week in juvie. Broke my probation, so I did a month in juvie. Got out on good behavior. Watched the Avs win the cup, so that was about 23 years ago. Whew! And then it was after that that I eventually lost my virginity. But then I still ended up getting with the one girl I was supposed to lose my virginity with. That was my first sexual relationship. There was another one, Kirsten, most beautiful woman in the world. Way out of my league. Ended up getting her. She worked at Dippin' Dots. That was another sexual relationship. But I'll go over relationships later. That's pretty much the gist of my 20s, unless I go into... Then I got married to Amanda. That was a whole other deal. Woo! See, it's crazy thinking about all these things. But, yeah, I was in juvie for a bit for that. Threatening my father. I was holding the same knife I was planning on using to kill Chelsea. It ended up being taken as evidence. Ooh, one time I was starting fires, and the police got called, and my friend and I got arrested for starting fires. I was kind of a pyro, too. I also started a fire in the sink in the basement, and my mom smelled it. Man, I had very troubling teenage years, which is why there's no point in just continuing to go on, because they would go on and on. There was Kirsten, there was Nikki. I got this tattoo. It kind of proves it all. The spikes in my heart. My initials make out the heart, PC, and each spike has different initials. There's Nikki, there's Melissa, with my first kiss. We went over the first kiss, the other one, but I digress. Just trailing off. That was most of my teenage years. I guess we could discuss the whole Amanda thing in the 20s video. But yeah, I was very troubled. But luckily grew out of it and learned a lot of valuable lessons. It was an interesting decade. And I shouldn't have made it to 30, just like they asked me in 4th grade. Where will you be in your 30? And I thought I'd be dead. You know, and then one day I was going through Andy Kaufman's book that I never really read, but I fingered through once. And discovered that he discovered vulgarity alert. Self-gratification the same way I did. I remember being pants down, belly down on the bathroom floor and the bathroom rug, kind of stimulated me, and that's when I got interesting. And then when I was babysitting for these people, I had to go through a CPR class for kids and everything, and I was babysitting for these people. And that's when I discovered porn. Because I was a snooper. Sorry, I was a snooper. And I found this guy's porn. And I checked it out, and it was my first time seeing porn. And it was my first time discovering ejaculate. I saw substance come out of this dude's penis when he was complete, and I was like, ew, what is that? Because it was before I had reached that point. At that time, I could have an orgasm without ejaculate. I was not looking forward to the ejaculate part. And ever since, it's become, luckily easily disposable since I'm not circumcised. Anywho, I think that's enough. We'll talk about more stuff in the next month's video about my 20s, where I swear, it doesn't get any more vulgar. Okie dokie. I am not a murderer.